Okay, so the Monkey has just over 600 miles on it, and it's time for its first oil change. So I was going to briefly go through the process to do this. I assume it's pretty similar to that of the Grom. We've got the oil drain plug down here that we're going to first drain the oil. Then we need to remove the bolts around the side of this engine cover. Then there's a screen that we're going to clean out first, and then the oil spinner, which we're going to open up and clean out. Put everything back together. Hopefully we don't do any damage to the gasket that goes in between the engine case cover and the engine. Assuming not, we just put everything back together, fill it back up with oil, and should be good to go. All right, before we get started, here's everything that you're going to need to do this oil change. First, of course, is the oil. I've got the Mobil 1 10W40. All you need to do is make sure that it has wet clutch protection. That's the most important thing. Otherwise, the brand of motor oil I don't think matters too much. You'll need a 12 millimeter, a 19 millimeter, and a 14 millimeter socket to take apart the right rear set. You'll need the 12 millimeter bolt for the right side, 19 millimeters for the nut on the right side, and on the other side you'll need a separate ratchet and a 14 millimeter socket to hold it in place as you remove the nut. Then you need a 5 millimeter Allen key for the Allen bolts to go all the way around the outside casing. You'll need a 10 millimeter socket to remove the 3 nuts that hold the oil spinner cover. Obviously you'll need a funnel to put the oil back in, and interestingly enough, a penny to hold the gears in place as you remove the nuts for the oil spinner. So first thing I'm going to do is remove the right rear set here. I'm not sure if you need to or not. It looks like there might be enough clearance to pull this out without it, but I figure just to make it easier, there's just 2 bolts here. I'm going to remove this and put it to the side, drain the oil, pull this off, and then get to the cleaning. Go ahead and level out the bike just to make sure that you get all of the oil out. Before I forget, I'm going to put back the drain plug using a fresh crush washer. Try not to reuse crush washers because the process of the crush is what keeps it completely sealed. So once it's been compressed once, the sealing properties are somewhat limited the second time. So always try to use a new one each time you pull out the drain plug. This uses a 5 millimeter Allen key. I'm just going to use a box wrench to get some leverage on these since I need to use the long end. Okay, and that's the engine casing off. You can see that the gasket that goes around the housing here all stayed intact really neatly, so should be no problem putting that back on as is. Then the 2 things that we're going to clean here, since the Monkey doesn't have a traditional oil filter, one is this catch screen down here, and then we're going to open this up to clean out the oil spinner. This is easy to do. It's just a matter of pulling it out and cleaning it. The oil spinner, though, as you try to ratchet on this, will turn the gear here. So it appears that the trick, at least for the Grom, is to just insert a penny in between the gears so that it holds. We'll clean the screen first, and then we'll tackle this. So being mindful of the orientation, it kind of has a piece of pie shape with the thin edge going inside. And you can see that I did have a fair amount of gunk caught up in the filter there, so I'm going to clean that out real well and get this back in, and then we'll tackle the oil spinner. So I just used a paper towel to pull it all off, and this is nice and clean, and we're inserting it back in the same orientation. I don't know if this is here as a reference point or not, but at least on mine, there's this white dot on the upper side that goes in the back. So that may be a reference point on purpose, but I'm going to go ahead and reinsert this. And then let's look at opening up the oil spinner. So as mentioned, as you try to unlock this, it just moves the whole assembly. So what I'm going to do is put a coin in between the gears down here to prevent it from moving. And if it's a penny, it should be soft enough that it wouldn't cause any damage to the actual gears as it puts pressure on it. So you can see I have a penny jammed in there to keep the gears from spinning as I'm trying to loosen these. And so you can see there's some gunk that's built up on the inside of the spinner, and so that's all that we're cleaning out here. Especially at the bottom, there's quite a bit of gunk. All right, that looks good. And the gasket also that goes in between the plate that we removed looks to be in good shape. So we'll leave it as is. Get these bolts back in. Don't forget to remove the penny. You don't want to leave that in when you put the assembly back together. So we'll get this in, the bolts to that, the engine casing hab back on, the bolts back in, and fill it up with oil. For tightening these bolts, it looks like I need to still use the penny, so I'm going to use it on the opposite side of the gear so it holds it as I tighten the bolts. It's just a matter of slipping it up into here. Just kind of keeping tension on it so that the penny holds. And then don't forget to get the penny out. With the casing back on, I'm going to reconnect this right rear set. I didn't take the bolt all the way out, so it's just a matter of slipping it back on, and should just be getting the 19mm nut back on and the bolt for the lower half. I'm using this Mobil 1 10W40 Racing 4T full synthetic motor oil. Anything that has wet clutch primary protection should be fine. I think the other two ratings that you should be looking for is MA and MA2. The sticker's kind of blocking it, but I can see through it. I don't know if the camera is, but it says MA/MA2. And those are the indicators that it works well with the Honda bikes. So I believe the Monkey takes 0.9 quarts of motor oil. Obviously this is a quart, so I'm gonna put, I'm gonna leave about 1/10 of a quart in the bottle here. And then the Monkey, instead of having a dipstick, just has this indicator to show between these two lines where the oil should line up. So optically it should be pretty easy to see, although I'll need to make sure that the bike is upright since it's leaning left with the kickstand right now. Just as a final check, as I bring the bike to level. You can see it's just below the top line there. All right, and that's it. Pretty simple process, probably more tedious than it needs to be. Had it had just a regular oil filter, this would have been a much quicker process. If you have any questions, please throw those into the comments below. Like and subscribe. Thanks for watching, guys.